In beekeeping, catastrophes almost never arrive loudly. Colonies never suddenly collapse. Queens don't randomly fail, and Varroa mites don't just come out of nowhere. What happens instead is a series of small, easily missed signals. And these small signals, when they go unnoticed, will lead to large outcomes that we don't want. That might be something like a brood pattern tightening just a little bit, a population curve that stalls out instead of climbs, a hive that sounds normal but kind of feels off, and a behavior shift that you notice but choose to write off as nothing. And so you kind of just ignore it and go on about the inspection. The mistake here is not in ignorance. The mistake is timing. You've heard me say it before, and I'm going to say it again. Beekeepers are trained to respond to symptoms. And bees communicate tiny, quiet little signals long before these symptoms ever actually appear. And that gap between that small signal and when things happen big enough for us to notice is where the outcomes are decided and everything becomes too late. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hive Doctor. Here's a false assumption when it comes to beekeeping when we're looking at our bees. If it's serious, if it's something serious inside, it'll be obvious. We've been trained to believe that real problems with a colony make a lot of noise. And I don't mean the bees are making noise. I mean the thing is obvious. They definitely got American foul brood. They definitely have something going on with mites. Oh man, look at the brood, there must be a queen issue. We expect these issues we've been trained to look for and identify to just come out and scream at us. But that belief is expensive because then that's all you're looking for. And there's this, seems to be like this universal law that what you look for is exactly what you're going to find. But the very fact that we treat all of our colonies similar and we get different results shows us that we can't keep bees on a symptomatic based system. I've seen this play out over and over in my own apiaries, my mentors, through different equipment, a lot of my students, club members. One of the most common things I hear, and it's possibly a phrase that you've even said yourself, is, "They seemed fine last time I looked at them. They were okay last week." It's the same story every time. The collapse of a colony always feels sudden, like out of nowhere. I didn't see that coming. I know I've said it. However, the cause of that collapse is never sudden. It started a long time ago in those small little quiet signals that we miss. Now, missing a small signal doesn't just cost you a moment. It shifts the trajectory of a hive throughout the season and for each and every one of them, because we pretty much manage one colony the same we manage all of them. When these small signals are ignored, they lead to major unwanted outcomes. However, this is the part that most beekeepers never think of, and it's not to create any sort of blame. It's simply because beekeeping is not trained this way. And here it is. When those small signals are looked for and noticed when they happen, instead of ignored, they lead to major outcomes, but the ones that we want. The real question isn't, what should I do? The real question is, what is this hive currently and quietly telling me? What cycle is naturally in the process of happening when I go into a hive and look? I'm not just getting a snapshot. I'm looking at the middle of something that's trying to happen without realizing it. And then my interference, my good intentions of intervening, are actually messing with that process that's going on because I don't recognize it, because we don't recognize it. And we look for symptoms because symptoms allow us to move into action. That's what we do. We keep bees. We're beekeepers. We're not bee looker-atters, right? Well, we should be. Although I don't think that would be a really cool name. Hey, look, it's a bee looker-atter. Let's not go there. And because these symptoms ask us for some sort of action in the form of us reacting to them, in the form of immediate intervention, we missed the signals long ago that didn't ask for action necessarily. They just ask for interpretation. They're quietly there, asking us to pay attention and ask ourselves, what is currently going on? What can I help the bees do now that they're already doing before they get into the point where I don't want them to be? Before they have a spotty brood pattern? Before they have less honey stores than I anticipated? Before they're nutritionally deficient and I don't know what to do or I can't do it in time? And those moments of reading these signals, sometimes the answer isn't immediate intervention. It's restraint. By letting the process that's currently going on finish before we jump in there and add an additional pressure to what they're already trying to balance out from. And we don't restrain because nothing is happening, but because something already is, like I just mentioned. Did you know or ever stop to think, I mean, I didn't for a long time, that a honeybee colony is always in the process of something. They're always playing this balancing act the way that they do it best, according to internal and external pressures. And pressures are okay for a hive. They can adjust to 1 or 2 pressures, rebalance the system by reallocating the resources that they have inside. But when we intervene and interrupt these processes, we end up adding another pressure, and when these pressures stack on top of one another, it's too much for the colony to recover from in time. And so interrupting those processes that are naturally unfolding and trying to come to some sort of conclusion affects the balance and recovery time of not only the process, but again, the added pressure from our inspection. Here's an example. Let's say a brood pattern is tightening just a little bit. To us, as going in looking for symptoms, it looks like a queen is failing and they don't have enough brood. So our immediate reaction is to fix it by either giving them more brood to bump up their population or to requeen, assuming that the current queen is no good or that she's failing. But the better interpretation is reading that tightening brood as a signal. If it's happening in spring, that's a bad thing because that's when bees are growing. But if this tightening brood pattern is happening in the fall, that means the bees are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're beginning to contract and preserve what they have left before going into wintertime. And so that tightening brood pattern is actually a good thing in the case of fall. There's nothing wrong with the queen, nothing wrong with the brood, nothing wrong with their population size. So that pattern, that signal you're noticing, isn't a failure, it's a forecast. And a forecast is always something that looks ahead to see where it's going. In other words, trajectory. Where is the trajectory of this colony going? What does the forecast of my bees look like? But I've got to read the signals in order to understand that. And the signals for us first should be out here. External pressures, external cues, and those little signals out here that affect what goes on in here. So again, we would have to ask ourselves, what are they currently in the process of doing? And in the case of fall, in that diminishing brood pattern, they're doing exactly what I mentioned. They're lowering their population, tightening it around a smaller brood area, and going into conservation mode before the winter hits. And this question must be a variable that we insert into every inspection with every season in consideration in order to get an accurate assessment. Then, when that small signal has been noticed, it turns into a major desired outcome instead of the ones that none of us want to see ever. So what do we get from this? That bees rarely shout about having a problem. They whisper early, and they stop whispering once it's too late. And once it's too late, usually that little whisper turns into a buzz of anxiety. I've seen a nervous buzz, is what I call it, where the bees are running all over the comb. Order has turned to chaos. They don't know what they're doing. And now that I'm in the hive, I'm making it even worse because I missed something early. So most experienced beekeepers, they're not faster at doing what we all want to do. They simply have learned to notice the signals sooner. Those signals that are the quiet, natural turning points in a colony as they respond to internal and external pressures. This way of seeing things applies to every hive and in every season, depending on what the bees are doing in that season. It's how we learn to read the systems that are going on already, before they break down. If you'd like to learn more about signal-based beekeeping, join my online school community. It is Clan Beekeeper, where we have a membership site. There's a 7-day free trial, and we have weekly live Q&As on seasonally relevant topics. And we interact all week, every day, as each of us feels like it. It is a guided, collaborative group. After that free week, it's $29 a month. And if you stick with us, you get one of my books in ebook form, whichever one you choose. I hope to see you in the school group. Join Clan Beekeeper today. Thank you guys for joining the Hive Doctor today. I'll see you in the next video. Hive Doctor out.